Hello, I'm Liz, one of Derry's reference librarians, and welcome to a Christmas episode of Misinformation Busters. Once a week, we tackle a rumor or a false or misunderstood story, and we try to separate fact from fiction. And this week, we're talking about the man of the hour, the jolly old elf himself. We're talking about Santa Claus. So, what's the story? Seriously, it's Santa. We all know who he is. And if you aren't familiar, Santa is a rotund man who lives in the North Pole, wears a red suit, and delivers presents to children all over the world on Christmas Eve. He's the man kids are trying to impress all year and has been a staple of this holiday for over a century. But where does he come from? Some people think that Santa, or the image of Santa, is a product of Coca-Cola advertising. Others say it comes from fables, and some even say that there is a flesh and blood Santa Claus. So, what are the facts? Just getting this out of the way, I am not going to discuss whether or not Santa can actually deliver millions of toys on Christmas Eve. Kids may be watching. I'm not a monster, and it's the year 2020. Enough bubbles have been burst. But the story of Santa and how he became a Christmas icon is fascinating, especially because, technically, Santa is real. That's right. The inspiration for Santa was a real man from the 3rd century, roughly. The Santa story begins with Saint Nicholas, a monk who lived in what is now modern-day Turkey. And if the idea of Santa originating in the Middle East rather than Europe surprises you, just remember that the Middle East, and the Fertile Crescent specifically, was where much of Western civilization was centered at the time, along with Greece and Rome. There's a reason it's considered one of the cradles of civilization. Anyway, St. Nicholas was a humble monk, but was admired for his kindness and generosity and became the subject of legend. One of the stories of his generosity did not involve toys, but involved providing the father of 3 young women with dowries, or money or assets, so they could get married, so that they could be married off rather than sold into prostitution. Far cry from getting a fire engine for Christmas. Anyway, the legend of St. Nicholas spread, and he became known as a spirit of generosity and a protector of children. And with that spread, other cultures started to put their spin on the legend. Russia and other Slavic cultures had Ded Moroz, the Dutch have Sinterklaas, Ukraine has Sviate Mykolai, and Japan has Annual Gift Man. Okay, that last one's a Simpsons joke. Japan just knows him as Santa Claus. But though that legend has evolved, we still see the inspiration of the original St. Nicholas all over the world. Now let's look at Santa in the US, though, since there is that theory that Coca-Cola created Santa. So we now know that the creation of Santa part isn't true, since the legend of Santa has existed way before Coke. The Santa that came over here seems to be the Dutch Santa, Sinterklaas. Does that sound familiar? Sinterklaas was the shortened nickname of Saint Nicholas, and there were mentions of him in around the 1770s, and historians found more references in the 1800s. In 1804, New York Historical Society member named John Pintard distributed woodblock prints of him. And in 1809, famed writer Washington Irving brought Old Klaus some more attention when he called St. Nicholas the patron saint of New York. As St. Nick's popularity grew, he was used to advertise Christmas, contrary to the Madison Avenue made-up Christmas 75 years ago theory. Okay, that's really just my dad's theory. Christmas was advertised as early as the 1820s, and Santa was there. In the 1840s, there were actually model Santas for kids to look at, and the Salvation Army has actually been using Santa since the 1890s. But where does the image of modern Santa come from? Well, as we can see, there's really no one source. As we see here, Santa's gone from being a humble monk to a Christmas legend, and each culture has their own special take on said legend. By the time Coca-Cola came around, Santa had been used in Christmas advertising for decades. If anything, their image, while it popularized the image of Santa, was inspired by an idea that was already there. Again, I think it's good to stress that there is no one true source, but there might be something that we can point to as a cultural touchstone, a moment where the modern image of Santa became realized and reached the masses. And that, according to the History Channel, is the 1822 poem by Clement Clarke Moore, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," originally known as An Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas. Look at how Santa's described. Sure, the red was already there, as was the beard, but the jolly old elf, the sleigh, the reindeer, the belly that shakes like a bowl full of jelly. Sounds an awful lot like the Coke advertisements and the men that you see at the mall. And look at the image that Thomas Nast drew for the poem in 1881. If there is anything that seems to be the genesis of our modern version of Santa, it's that picture. But still, we wouldn't have even had that image without centuries worth of lore and the real generosity of one man. So, have a Merry Christmas, a great holiday, and I will see you in the new year. I'm sure we're all really glad to say goodbye to 2020. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next year.